So you still teach, of course, and you still teach your Knowing by Sensing course, but you now also curate the works of Piet Mondrian. And originally you weren't sure that you would be able to put the multisensory approach in your curation. But I know that you now have, but can you quickly tell us who Mondrian is first and how you discovered that his works are in fact multisensory?
Yes, Piet Mondrian. We all recognize his paintings, the red, yellow, blue, white, gray, and black lines, horizontal, vertical. That's to sum up his neoplastic painting. But Piet Mondrian was born in 1872, and he first was a traditional painter of landscapes until he moved to Paris in 1912, and there he discovered a type of music, the predecessor of jazz, ragtime, and that actually inspired him, not Picasso, not Braque. That inspired him to paint, well, in the manner, the way that he's still known for today, music and mostly rhythm. And when I discovered that, I thought, hey, can I use the knowing by sensing approach here? Should I just tell people about that he moved to Paris and he enjoyed rhythms, or shall we actually play those rhythms in the museum? And even more, what if we even start clapping to those rhythms? Clapping to the beat of Piet is what I called that tour, multisensory tour. We dance. Mondrian was also a great dancer, took professional lessons because he saw dancing as creating compositions in space as well. So dancing, music, painting, so many senses come together when it comes to Piet Mondrian, who didn't even want you to see the color planes and the lines. Yes, you were supposed to look at them, but those were just gateways, doorways to something much bigger and rhythmical. And yeah, rhythm is one of the most fascinating phenomena because rhythm addresses at least 4 senses simultaneously. 4 senses. I don't know any other activity that addresses 4 senses. Yes, okay, eating, making love, but all those senses then give you different information. In rhythm, it addresses 4 senses at a time while giving the exact same information. You can, of course, see rhythm. If you clap your hands, you can feel it on your skin. You can hear rhythm, and you feel rhythm proprioceptically. That's what makes me move my hands at the beat that I hear. So rhythm combines interoception and exteroception. And that's why it's so phenomenal, I think. Yeah.
Obviously, you believe there are more senses than the 5 classic senses that Aristotle, which is, the 5 that we know. But do you want to explain a few more senses that you highlight maybe in your course or in your Mondrian curation, and explain what they are?
Sure, yes. One of the senses, well, it's a group of senses. It's called proprioception, so the feeling of oneself from within. Aristotle actually did name it, but throughout history there were different names for this inner sense. And Herder, the philosopher, called it beautifully, he called it the fingers of the mind. So in your mind, within, you can feel things, even just by when you look at someone who's being hurt, you can feel pain yourself. This is part of proprioception. So you mirror with your mirror neurons what someone else is going through, and then you feel it in your own body. This is, of course, essential for empathy. And this very sense is also essential for Mondrian. Mondrian wanted you to feel inner movement. Another sense that's part of proprioception is kinesthesia, from movement. And kinesthesia makes you feel where the different parts of your body are. So for the listeners, I'm sure that you, without looking, can now feel where your left hand is. I tried to feel where my nose is yesterday, but that's harder. It's easier to feel body parts that can move. And you can also sense where your position in space is right now, not just visually, but really kinesthetically. You can maybe, if you're sitting down, you can feel the weight pressing on your behind, and you can feel where your feet are, how the weight, how you can shift your weight from your left to your right foot. So yeah, I think it's the most important sense we have. We can live without our other external senses, except touch, I would say. But proprioception and kinesthesia, I think it's very hard to survive without that all-encompassing sense.
One of my friend's grandparents, they lost their sense of touch and smell, I think it was.
Oh.
Because they were very old, so they were losing some of their important functions of their body. And I just remember hearing this and thinking that is absolutely horrible, because yeah, like you said, touch is really important for us socially, for ourselves, and to feel better, as well as smell, right? That we do a lot with smell as well to kind of make us feel good and happy and think about our past or our present. So yeah, that really affected me when I was told that. So yeah.
Wow. And those are also smell and touch, the most intimate senses when it comes to relations. I mean, you can look at someone and maybe listen to someone's voice, but if you cannot touch or smell someone,
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time, you've talked about this as well, that these senses are not, because they're not as deemed as important. A lot of the time, doctors don't know how to approach this problem. So that's another issue, right? That if we can't consult someone about it, then it becomes even more isolating and difficult to deal with.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, people who lose their sense of smell, who become anosmic, often become depressed, and then their doctor tells them, just be glad that you won't smell any farts. So what's the big deal? Be glad that you still have your sense of sight and hearing. Yeah, and I think this is also because smelling and touching happens so implicitly, subconsciously all the time. So you don't know what you got till it's gone. And when it's gone, you know how devastating it is. Yeah. And then the other person who hasn't lost their sense of smell cannot imagine what it's like until you experience it. And this is what COVID-19, of course, did. So many people lost their sense of smell that a greater community now realizes how essential that sense is. Yeah. Did you lose your sense of smell?
No, when I had COVID, it actually was the opposite.
Oh dear.
So I had like hypersensitive smell, which also drove me crazy. But I was happy to not lose my sense of smell, because I know it's very difficult. So and also with the job I'm in, that would be a little bit difficult if I did. So I wanted to also ask you if you could give us an example of how you've applied multisensory approaches to your curation of Mondrian.
Yes. First of all, when I started the job 2 years ago, I asked my new superior, my boss, I asked him, is it okay if during working hours I start taking boogie lessons so I can better understand Mondrian? And he said, yes, of course. I'm so glad he took me seriously. So this has happened in my career path, that I meet the right people who take it seriously. So very, very grateful for that. And that what I learned in those boogie woogie classes, I teach people. People do a tour with me and I dance with them. We dance to Mondrian and then something clicks. They better understand him. We also, again with IFF, created 3 smellscapes. And those smellscapes are his Amsterdam studio, his Paris studio, and his New York studio. He moved from Amsterdam to Paris and then to London and then died eventually in New York. And I was wondering, is it possible to smell Mondrian's development towards abstraction by recreating the smells of his studios? Because you and I both know every activity, every material comes with a different smell. So his studios were so dramatically different. Also, they changed with his style. And I thought, okay, so maybe the smells of his studio also reflect his painting style. And well, we installed the smells. People enjoy it tremendously. They say they can better imagine being in the studio, that he was a real person of flesh and blood. But I feel you can also indeed smell abstraction. Do you remember the Amsterdam smell? Can you smell it before your mind knows?
No, I always remember the New York one.
The New York one,
because
yeah.
It's so painty.
Painty, yeah.
So that's always the one I remember for some reason.
Yeah.
I mean, if for the listeners, if you are ever in The Hague, you can go and smell Piet Mondrian's 3 studios. It's very fun to experience, and they're all very different, I think, because you have kind of more musty one and then a more clean painty tape one, which is I would say maybe even most like what you imagine Mondrian is, right? These like clean colors and so I think it captures it well.
Thanks. Yeah, and I totally agree that the New York smells so clean, so pristine, so well flat, like his paintings. There's no more pictorial space. It's so bright because Mondrian painted from his inner imagination. He didn't need his studio was so empty. All you could smell there was, well, his materials. So abstraction actually smells of the materials you use. Well, when you paint from observation and you collect a lot of items, which Mondrian did, cashmere shawls, Persian rugs, copperware. He also smoked a lot. So the really dense smell of his Amsterdam studio when he still painted naturalistically also smells so much more 3-dimensional, so much darker also, so much, a lot of details, just like in his painting. So I didn't know this before I started this project, that this could actually be the case, that your studio smell reflects your artistic philosophy.
Yeah, it makes sense actually. Yeah.